A very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much for being with us for the day two, the second day of the Valletta Tech Summit. We're going to dive into straight away towards Pascal Van Kniff, our first keynote speaker, discussed earlier on how organizations are trying to make use of Internet of Things technologies in their own organizations. And we're really delighted to have with us four panelists. I'd like to invite you to watch the short bio of each of our panelists straight away. So Chris, maybe I can start with you being the CTO of Hands-On Systems. So what are some real-world challenges which you have solved with the Internet of Things technologies so far?
Good morning. Basically, at Hands-On IoT, we started with IoT in reality, because when we speak about IoT, it's not about just sensors and monitoring with sensors and whatnot. One of the main problems which we solved is with basically, we focus a lot on tracking, basically. We can track basically vehicles and people as well. And we use, in this case, we use 2G or 3G and stuff like that, basically. Sorry about that. Also, we focus a lot on mobile asset tracking. In this case, we use RFID technology. And we also work with Bluetooth technology, because obviously when you say IoT, there are a lot of different technologies which you can use. In the case of Bluetooth, for example, we have a solution which can be used, for example, in museums. So you have Bluetooth beacons placed around points of interest in the museums, and basically the user, whenever he's close by to a piece of art, basically a notification is popped up to his or her phone with information about this piece of art. So this for people like myself who are not kind of considered very artsy. This will be a very kind of dynamic experience and interactive, basically, and much more interesting. And then finally, we also obviously work with sensor monitoring. And in this case, this is like the more traditional kind of what people think about when they think about IoT. We solved some various problems with sensors, basically. One of them, for example, it was about parking sensors. So basically, as you all know, here in Malta, parking is a major headache. And we solved the problem by having some various streets where you have a parking sensor beneath in each parking area, parking bay. And whenever a car backs up onto this parking bay, a message is sent basically to our servers. And this is then transmitted to an API call, basically is made to the panel. And the panel will we can increment or decrement the amount of parking sensors. So the idea will be that there will be a panel in the street in question, and basically you will know how many free parking spaces there are, basically, which is obviously a very useful solution for the streets in Malta. Apart from that, we also implemented something similar for water level, basically. So, for example, there will be cases well, even a drainage, for example, you know, where you have to maintain, you have to check the amount of water or liquid in that area, basically, and if it exceeds some particular amount, again, a message is sent to the required, to someone on the other side who is going to take care of detection, basically. And the idea is to avoid damage and obviously wasting of money, ultimately. We also did something similar for gas monitoring and even for petrol monitoring, basically to solve the same type of problem. Now, obviously, when it comes to IoT, the possibilities are endless. You can solve basically anything with it. One of the features which we are currently looking into, which is of interest to me as well, because it's helping people. It's about having a panic button, for example. So let's say there are the elderly people, you know, who maybe they are living on their own. And the idea is that they will have kind of a small sensor, a small device, which basically you press a button if they are feeling something wrong, basically, and a message is transmitted, and someone on the other side, once again, it can be someone from his family, for example, or maybe even from the hospital, for example, and an action can be taken before something wrong happens, basically. Finally, as I was saying, with all of the kind of above different technologies, our main focus is to kind of integrate all of these different technologies in order to basically be able to solve any problem which is kind of thrown at us, you know.
So thank you so much, Chris, for taking us through how Hands-On Systems is trying to integrate IoT in its systems, in its day-to-day operations. You're a tech company, if I can put it that way. However, one of our panelists is representing one of the largest manufacturing companies in Malta, STMicroelectronics. So I'm really intrigued to learn more from Daniel Pisani, Senior Engineering specialist at STMicroelectronics, to tell us more how ST is trying to integrate IoT systems in its operations as well.
Hello, good morning, Keith, and good morning to all. Yes, at ST Microelectronics, we look at IoT and data analytics more from the context of Industry 4.0, from the industrial aspect. And over the past years, we have been looking at various use cases. But if I had to categorize them into three areas, I would say that the three main ones are those related to improving equipment efficiency, improving the quality of our products, and also facilities monitoring, basically. Looking at the aspect of improving equipment efficiency, this is a key, because at a manufacturing company like ST Microelectronics, there are not hundreds but thousands of equipment. So having a process improvement on these equipment will, of course, create cost benefits amongst others. Traditionally, on such equipment, maintenance has been almost, at least for the past decades, preventive maintenance. But recently, not just through enhancements in data analytics capabilities, but also through the capabilities of integrating new sensors, which maybe were not designed directly in original equipment, we are able also to move towards predictive maintenance, where rather than having maintenance done just on a scheduled yearly basis, you have a more dynamic way of setting up maintenance for all the equipment. Recently also, considering that some of the equipment, of course, it has high value and it can be relatively old. When I'm saying old, it can be 5 to 10 years old. They were manufactured at a time where some of the technologies we have today were not in place. So right now we have to augment some of the equipment with new IoT sensors. And we are also trying to move from not just predictive maintenance, but also prescriptive maintenance, where using additional data that we gather, we are able to know not just when we should perform maintenance, but what type and why the maintenance should be performed. That's linked to another kind of domain within AI, which is explainability of AI, which is a challenge on its own. The second category, which I mentioned, is the quality of the projects and of the material, basically. So ensuring that within the facility, within the manufacturing plant, the material is being handled in the right way. It's not exceeding quality thresholds. And we have internal monitoring to ensure that such capabilities and such requirements are always met. And if any thresholds are exceeded, the appropriate action is taken. And finally, maybe the more traditional aspect of IoT on facilities monitoring, to monitor large pumps, for example, in the facility, but also to monitor the environment in general, to basically try and tackle energy efficiency concerns in the building in general. So those are the three main use cases, not the only ones, but the three main ones which we are working on at ST Microelectronics for the time being.
Thank you so much, Daniel Pisani. I'd like to introduce now Daniel Kashkiri from EY, because EY, if not mistaken, a year or two ago, coined IoT as a transformative factor for businesses. Why do you believe so, Daniel, at EY?
Okay, first of all, hi Keith, and hi to everyone. So IoT describes the connection, right, between devices and the internet, to the internet using embedded software and sensors. And there's a lot of data communication and data collection and exchange that happens. IoT enables a form of free-flowing conversation, as Chris rightly mentioned. It's not just sensors. There's a lot of free-flowing conversation between man, machine, software, hardware. With IoT, there are virtually endless opportunities at home, at work, even for leisure purposes. It acts as the bridge between physical and the digital world. IoT brings significant change for both the industrial and the consumer worlds, and it can also improve business efficiency, can make our lives much easier. IoT will transform companies by opening new growth opportunities and ways in which the business can compete. However, IoT is more than just technology. It is, one needs to look at the commercial and the operational implications surrounding IoT. Appropriate organizational changes need to be in place, and often these are harder it's harder to adopt and to change business models than it is to adopt new technologies. IoT-driven transformation in business must happen across a number of channels. So IoT will transform processes, business models, finance, people, technology, and even culture. So first of all, IoT will transform, as we said, the processes. It will create new processes within the business. At one end, it could be something simple like a new stream of data from remote assets. At the other end of the spectrum, it could be you need a complete overhaul of how the organization actually operates. Looking at business models, IoT will also transform the organization's business models. There are implications. It could be something simple, such as streamlining of an existing process, or else it could be something more complex than that with new business models and organizational change. IoT will also transform the financial aspect of the organization. Now, new business models will often mean that there is changes in the financial aspect of the organization. One needs to take into consideration the capital expenditure, operational expenditure of IoT, and also IoT might also generate new revenue streams for the organization. Another transformative factor, another area which is impacted by IoT is the people aspect. So IoT will influence the human resources requirements. Obviously, you need people who are capable of managing IoT implementations. The suppliers obviously will typically help a lot with the heavy lifting of IoT. However, you need people in-house who are capable to manage and work with this technology, with the data streams that are being generated from IoT. And here is where we see roles such as data scientists, for example, which are increasingly gaining importance. IoT also transforms the technology, obviously, and the systems. It will introduce new systems in the organization, device management systems, data analytics systems. These need to be integrated with other systems within the organization, such as ERPs, CRMs. And finally, I believe that IoT also impacts the culture of the organization. There is the potential need for a cultural change within the organization. As you have new data streams. The organization needs to become and needs to adapt and become more service focused or more IT focused as a result of IoT.
So Stefan from Eunoia, for maybe you can just touch on what Daniel mentioned earlier, how companies, organizations can leverage on modern data platforms and be driven by data in their operations and processes.
So good morning, everyone, first of all. So what we all understand in some shape or form, businesses are data businesses today, so you cannot not be a data business, either through spreadsheets or through advanced data platforms. Businesses need to measure and understand performance. This is the reality of today, being revenue, operational metrics, and then, as Daniel rightly said, they need to re-engineer their processes. And this is the real trick or the real activity for an organization to become really data-driven, so to change their processes in combination of the ability of new insights derived either by IoT or, a combination of IoT and backend systems which derive new insights. If we look at what's happening with data, and this is mostly related to the devices that are connected to the internet nowadays, industry analysts expect data to quadruple by 2025. So this is 2020 to 2025. Only 27% of that is being analyzed. So there's a huge opportunity for organizations who want to become sort of leaders in their area of the market by analyzing the data and deriving new insights. And we have seen this paradigm shift. During the pandemic, it was intensive. So organizations understood that they needed to harness what data they had to become faster in the market, to adapt faster. Mostly because the data-driven organizations that were already embracing the data and IoT were faster to adapt to such a crisis. So they started looking into, but really looking into providing this information. We're looking at legacy verticals, dinosaurs who started looking at improving or modifying their operations to include IoT, AI, machine learning, to start changing their process and operational mechanics to be able to adapt faster at the end of the day. Simple examples that come to mind are when the pandemic, when the retail shops started opening, we had customers who started collecting data from the shop counters, and these would alert the shopkeeper of the limit, that the limit was going to be reached in the amount of people in the shop. And that data was augmented with other data from backend offices, and you had a dashboard, a shop health dashboard, they call it. A shop health dashboard where centrally they would monitor the health of the shops across the island. So there's a lot of uses. The use cases are enormous, but the most important factor is that organizations need to put, it's easy to say revenue increased by 10% yesterday because, and people counted more than 20% of the previous day. But if you don't take action, if there's no process within the organization to act as fast as the data is received or as new insights are discovered, then that data is at the end of the day useless.
with us real life examples. Maybe Daniel from his team, maybe he can share the challenges you've encountered so far when trying to use IoT technologies, and possibly even Chris from Hands-On. So Daniel and Chris.
Yes, actually, I think what Daniel and Stefan were just mentioning earlier are challenges that we have been encountering really over the past years at ST. So of course, with an IoT, initially you start with the technological challenges, integration, choosing which type of sensors, and integrate with your traditional systems. And that, of course, is a challenge in itself. But I think looking back and looking a little bit forward, the main challenges that we have found were related to the governance, particularly when you want to scale, the device and IoT management, which was also mentioned earlier. And finally, something, of course, that is prevalent is the aspect of cybersecurity. Starting a little bit from the governance, in a way, when we're talking about governance, it's something quite. So it can start from something that is very simple. So like who should maintain an IoT device? So when an IoT device is deployed, if it's not working, who is going to replace it? To the, let's say, more complex, so which is who is accountable to the data being collected, who is accountable to its format to ensure that the systems which are making use of that data can actually use that data. And then you go into questions of retention period, should I stream data at a specific frequency, how can I adapt to that, and making it more general to various use cases. And when it comes again also on the point of governance, one challenge that is easily encountered is that when you have a small number, when you have a POC and you start with a small number of devices, it's one thing. But when you want to cascade a project on a larger number of equipment, for example, which can reach thousands, that's a different story. And there's where, for example, device management comes into play. So you need to know, particularly if you're working on critical systems, what is the health of the devices in production. Are they collecting data? Is the data being collected in the right way? And again, who is going to monitor that, basically? Even if you have alerts, someone eventually needs to take action. And finally, of course, the cybersecurity aspect, in the sense that by design, most of the IoT devices are actually unsecure, kind of. So we need to ensure that as the time goes by, we need to ensure that the gateways, the devices are up to date in terms of the software and the OSs that they are installed, ensure that the right authentication process is in place, applying the principle of least privilege, it's just the application who can access or who needs to do maintenance, and trying to come up with a holistic approach to cybersecurity, such that it caters also for the for new use cases in the future, basically.
Thank you so much. So possibly, I don't know if Chris from Hands-On, maybe I'd like to rope in Chris to touch upon cybersecurity, because definitely that's one of the key challenges here. But also, Daniel mentioned when you're using IoT in many devices or a huge number of different devices, how are you dealing with that possible challenge there?
So basically, as Daniel rightly said, cybersecurity is a bit of a concern when it comes to IoT, because there are some networks basically which are open. So for example, there's the LoRa when it's called, which builds on top of LoRa. And when it comes to LoRa, when basically it uses the 868 frequency, it's called, which is completely open, this frequency. Now, just for you to understand, the 868 frequency is, for example, the same frequency which is used for walkie-talkies, for example, and it's used for a lot more other features, basically. Now, obviously, since the data is kind of unsecure during transit, obviously you have to implement an additional layer to obviously secure this data. So that is just not about just sending data. You have to kind of handle it yourself using encryption and stuff like that. So yes, it's a bit of a challenge, but obviously with some effort, obviously you need development for it, but you can secure it properly in that case.
So thank you so much, Chris. Possibly Daniel from EY. Why should data-driven organizations should harness IoT in their operations?
Yeah, so IoT is the bridge, right, between the physical and the digital world. As we mentioned, there are many opportunities for the organization because these smart connected devices will give you access to information and help you make more informed decisions. There are various reasons why data-driven organizations should embrace IoT. Firstly, I believe that IoT provides business with opportunities for improved operations and reliability. As Daniel was mentioning, for instance, you can use it for predictive maintenance. It can also result in a reduction in losses, also through real-time monitoring of what's happening. IoT can also result in increased efficiencies, in a reduction on costs. You can have more automation and better integration. Improve your operations, identify bottlenecks, and see where your resources are being wasted or drained, disproportionately. IoT can also result in higher revenues for the organization, for the business. Obviously, it depends on the specific use case and implementation, but obviously there are revenues for device manufacturers, data providers, data aggregators, service providers for sensors, and so on. IoT can also enhance the customer experience. It makes you better able to anticipate your customer needs, to deliver products that address their pain points. And it can also help free up personnel resources to interact with customers and focus on the customer experience. IoT also future-proofs the business operations and helps organizations become more agile. I believe Stefan was hinting at that earlier on. Also, by adjusting the business models to account for the increasing connectiveness of the world. This future-proofing will give the organization a competitive edge. IoT also facilitates the discovery of new business opportunities by gathering and analyzing massive data sets in order to extract insights that would, are previously new insights that could be useful for the organization.
Thank you so much, Daniel Kushkiri from EY. Stefan, Daniel just mentioned improved customer experience, employee management. What's your take on that? Because
well, as I said before, IoT is another data source. So the data estate per se, so including IoT and devices and now cloud applications, backend applications, and all file systems, etc. It's growing. So the data user, the business decision maker needs to make this data sort of talk to him to be able to react faster to the market, to be able to be faster than competition at the end of the day. This is what this is all about, to be better and improve your operations, to be sort of a leader in your area or a disruptor in your area. That depends on the size of the organization. And yes, it will affect definitely the employees and the type of employees that will need to be selected or employed, because there is a change, it definitely is. Having said that, I mean, we have panelists as well. We have a lot of suppliers, a lot of partners. Suppliers is a bit of a rude word in my vocabulary. We have a lot of partners who can help and assist organizations to become faster to the market. Because here it's a very specific expertise that is not available across the organizations. So it's normally siloed either by one or two employees, or else you need to you need to identify a partner and address that.
So thank you so much, Stefan. Maybe concluding remarks from all our panelists. So given your experience, Chris, Daniel, and Stefan, why should organizations still possibly reluctant in embracing harnessing IoT technologies, why they should seriously consider it? So Chris.
So from our end, the idea is to basically we have our own platforms, you know, so for companies and people who are still kind of getting into IoT and are still unfamiliar, we can kind of assist them in that case, so they can literally integrate with us either by using our platform or by using our APIs. And basically they, especially if they're going to use our platforms, they don't need to kind of really understand everything about IoT, you know, because we are doing all the heavy lifting for them, obviously. For those maybe who are a bit more technical, and maybe we have something which we don't offer from our own platform, from where they can gather and analyze the data, basically, we offer a lot of APIs as well. So the idea is that basically everyone can integrate with us. So again, we are doing the heavy lifting, and as long as a customer has devices which are installed and integrated with our kind of ecosystem, they can just connect and use our own API. They can get all the data which they require. And then it's up to them what are they going to do with it. They can either show it on their own user interface, they can maybe transmit it to some other platform. I mean, the sky is the limit, as long when you are providing APIs, basically. That's the whole point. That you have the data, because everything ultimately revolves around the data, right? So you have the data, we have the data in that case. And we can provide the data through our APIs, so customers can do whatever they please.
So thank you so much, Chris. Daniel?
Yes, so further to your question, Keith, I think we all agree here, and I think Chris, Daniel, and Stefan mentioned it already, that in the IoT space, the opportunities ahead are numerous. Whatever one can imagine, it can be almost tackled. What we would suggest basically for kind of anyone who is maybe reluctant to start, as you mentioned, but would like to start is, there are various opportunities for, let's say, doing some POCs for quick wins. Doing something on a specific use case to gather some understanding of IoT. It's very important that the challenges that we mentioned earlier, they are basically also factored in. So first starting with some quick wins, but at the same time taking also some tactical and strategic decisions ahead. Such that you don't end up basically once you have a POC without the tools, the necessary skills, the necessary people who can deploy that. And that of course requires some thought depending on the organization. Looking ahead, for example, in the manufacturing industry, one thing that is being worked upon, and one thing that we are also working upon, is to ensure that we have as much as possible the right standardization in place. So in terms of interfacing protocols, cybersecurity as was just mentioned, and ensuring that anyone who has an idea for an IoT project and wants to start it has the right framework to follow, such that it benefits basically all. So those would be basically at least my kind of suggestions.
We do have a question from one of our attendees, so please bear with me, Daniel, Kushkiri, and Stefan. Stefan might be possibly a good fit to answer the following question, because one of our attendees is asking the following question. Do current companies, customers who use or wish to use IoT systems in their businesses ask if it would be possible to use a tokenized system instead of FIAT when it comes to monetization the new IoT system. I don't know if it's too technical for you, Stefan, or if possibly Chris, Daniel, or anyone else can possibly share some insights into this question.
I mean, from my end, it's too technical. Yes, I'll be honest with that. Having said that, if it is a stream of data, whatever the stream of data is, there are protocols and abilities to transfer the data into a data platform. So as long as data is digitized, at least this is my mantra, what I always say, as long as data is digitized, it can be transformed and produced or into actionable insights. And if this data is possibly transferable, then it can be generated into insights. I mean, I don't know, Daniel or Chris, if you want to add something. I mean, Chris, probably it's more your area.
Yes. So basically, whenever you have data, I mean, you can even, for example, use. We are also offering. I mean, we're working on this at the moment. We are also offering a solution on Helium, it's called. So it's a blockchain basically where it's like it's a blockchain for wireless communication. So it's kind of the way forward in this regard. So in this case, I mean, in order to tokenize the data, you can use this, you know, so it's completely secure. I mean, it's completely secure, and you can work with it basically.
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to add that FIAT stands for Fault Injection Based Automated Testing. So I know Daniel Pisani from ST earlier on mentioned how they're trying to use IoT in preventive and prescriptive maintenance. So I don't know if it's related to such operations or processes or not. But I'd like to ask Daniel Kushkiri now for his concluding remarks. Daniel.
So echoing with what Daniel was mentioning earlier, I think yes, the approach for those wanting to start on IoT would be to start small and build up. But obviously you need to have a vision, a strategy, a roadmap of where you want to arrive. You need to consider business process re-engineering and all, the surrounding aspects of IoT as well. IoT is it's becoming more and more popular. There are a number of aspects which are increasing the uptake of IoT. We've got AI, we've got more connected devices nowadays with large amounts of data. We've got decreased computational costs, decreased storage costs, faster data transfers, there's cloud and big data. So I believe all of these are paving the way for IoT implementations. There are some challenges definitely that need to be taken into consideration. We mentioned security and trust. There's also compliance, maybe, is another aspect that needs to be taken into consideration. Incomplete data or falsified, data sets due to wrongly calibrated sensors. However, I believe that these can all be overcome with appropriate analysis and strategy.
So fantastic. Thank you so much, Daniel, Chris, Daniel and Stefan, for your insights and for being part of our very first panel discussion on the second day of the Valletta Tech Summit. I'm definitely sure your insights helped our attendees better understand how you're harnessing, integrating IoT technologies, what are the benefits, and also what are the challenges. So with that, I would like to thank you and wish you a fantastic day. Thank you so much. So before jumping into our next panel discussion focusing on sustainability, it's a buzzword nowadays, possibly an overused term. However, we're going to try and possibly better understand how IoT technologies can enable organizations in becoming more sustainable. So a very short video and then soon after introduction of our forthcoming panelists.
Sustainability is a key area in which the world benefits from the Internet of Things. From smart energy management playing an important role in increased air efficiency, to air quality monitoring devices using low-cost pollution sensors. Both have been positively impacted by the technology. IoT has always played a pivotal role in providing a plethora of real-time data to align timetables with actual demand in waste management. IoT sensors providing better route optimization in fleet management. Leak detection sensors in high-risk areas in buildings for smart water management. Meeting global demand while conserving resources and minimizing environmental impact for smart farming. Our next panel will be discussing further IoT and sustainability.
So that very short video encapsulates what we're trying to achieve with our next panel discussion after a very short break. It's lunchtime here in Valletta, so we'll give you around 10-15 minutes and then we will proceed with the second panel discussion. Thank you so much. See you in a bit.